Good morning, gamers. So, I'm assuming everybody knows what speedrunning is, and for some, it's a hobby that they dedicate much of their adolescent or adult lives to, completing the game as fast as possible using glitches, exploits, unique routing, and whatever else might be at your disposal to get the lowest time given various restrictions. For me, the closest I've ever gotten to speedrunning was an old Flash game called Exit Path that I dedicated hundreds of hours to in my childhood. I learned to abuse the glitches of the game, got into a small kind of speedrunning community, and practiced with a unique client so that I could get good enough to achieve otherwise unattainable times. Since then though, I've not really experimented much with speedrunning. Celeste was and still is one of my favorite games of all time, but I never really took it upon myself to complete it in a timely fashion. But what if I was speedrunning? What if I took my favorite game and tried to complete it as fast as possible so that I would get to experience pretty much none of what made it so great to me in the first place? Well, welcome to the video. A short hike is probably the most relaxing, peaceful, feel-good game you could ever imagine. The main objective is just to climb the mountain that's in front of you, and you can do pretty much anything else you want in the meantime. You get to talk to tons of NPCs with funny dialogue, each character having multiple things that they're going to say if you continue talking to them, which once you realize that, compels you to talk to everyone you see at least a couple of times. The game just makes you feel happy being a part of that ecosystem, that lively environment, on what's otherwise just some small quirky little island. You feel a sense of adventure wandering around, just taking your time, stopping and smelling the roses, going on side quests for upgrades to your flight, appreciating the fantastic music, and in general just sauntering or flapping your way from place to place. This video is not a review of a short hike, although if it was, I would probably give it a 9 in terms of first-time playability. So needless to say, I very much recommend the game to anybody somewhat interested in playing. I personally love it to death. So what if you took a fantastic rainy day game that's guaranteed to cheer you up when you're down and replace that experience with a need for speed? Just blasting your way through the game, doing as little content as possible, and finishing in a record time. A short hike is the game I will be focusing on for this video, but I imagine the process of learning and improving can be applied to pretty much any game you're learning to run. It's just that this is my only reference for it. It's a very different way to play games, but I think it's just as fulfilling as playing casually for its own reasons. Now, as I've said, I've never learned to do a speedrun before, so I can only speculate, but the first thing I imagine you should do when learning a run is watch a run of it. So that's what I did for both the Any% and the All Golden Feathers runs in the game. The Any% has a crazy glitch that shoots you all the way to the summit and seemed kind of boring and grindy for a single trick, so I opted to do the All Golden Feathers run instead. The routing was interesting, and there were a number of little tricks that I'd have to learn in order to complete even a single run in any reasonable amount of time, so I was intrigued. I decided to focus on the Golden Feathers category and moved on to learning more about the game's mechanics. I learned how to enable cheats for a quick game reset command, how to use a dialogue skip button, how to work live split, which was kind of finicky, what version of the game to use, and then hopped on stream to give the run a go. Watching through piece by piece, I began learning the route, messing up almost every trick or precise bit of movement I encountered, but processing the information pretty effectively. So effectively, in fact, that after following the run through once in its entirety, I didn't have to look at the world record run again. I would only occasionally reference it for optimizations and movement. By the way, this whole process was streamed live here on this channel, and all of the VODs are stored over on the archive channel, which I will link in the description. So, if you like this video or want to see the streams, make sure you subscribe, and I would love to see you come drop by. I also post consistent notifications on my Discord about when I go live or if I upload a full video. So there's that if you want it. Anyway, let's get into what actually happened during those streams. Learning the pathing around an island that, despite all my hours in the game, I'd never really understood geographically, I know, shocking, was honestly really fun. I taught myself reference points through trial and error, what benchmarks I should be looking out for, decided on my splits so that I could measure my progress and areas of improvement as I continued to do runs, and I cemented the route in my mind. I tried the same path a couple of times before I worried about getting everything right mechanically, so that I would have to think less actively about where I was going in future, and could focus more on how I was doing it. Now that I'd memorized the path and was ready to start doing some more serious runs, my times began to go down. For reference, the world record of the All Golden Feathers category is 7:49 by Markin as of writing this script. My time started horrendously by comparison. My first run clocked in at 27 minutes, as I was discovering the path alongside the video, starting and stopping after each small segment. My next was 15, followed by 17, so much shorter but still double the world record time. Then I shaved it down to 14.5 and 13 as I continued to play. Each run I was learning something, and I was completing each one in its entirety, even if I had to do some strange workarounds because I failed a trick. This meant I wasn't just getting better at the start as I reset over and over looking for a good run, I was slowly improving from the start to the finish. Sometimes getting a bad first couple jumps tempted me to reset, but I reminded myself that the time it took wasn't really important yet, and the experience I'd get from completing the run instead would be far more valuable down the line. I took a short break to grab some food and booted the game back up, ready to keep decreasing my time further. Immediately, the first run I got after I took my break was an 11:45, comfortably under 12 minutes, which I had been a minute off of just one run prior. I then followed it up with a run just over 12 minutes, which I got called washed up for, but I was feeling more and more confident. The satisfaction of constantly seeing improvement as I continued to do the runs was really powerful in keeping me hooked, wanting to do as many as I could. Each split was a chance to have an improved time in that section, even if overall I wasn't going to be getting a new personal best. I started grinding out runs. The intensity and the focus I was using totally threw my sense of time out the window. Each run was over 10 minutes, but it felt maybe like 3 or 4 tops. I'd set myself small goals. In other runs, that might be something like a new 10-second threshold. For me, it was roughly 30 seconds. And so aiming to get below 11:30, I quickly got an 11:26, setting my next goal at under 11 minutes. At this point, I had to reference the world record again, seeing what optimizations I was missing out on. The routing was mainly correct, but I was losing considerable time with every small detail. If there are 60 places I can lose a few seconds at, and I lose time at all of them, I'm going to be a few minutes behind, even though it feels like I'm only losing a second here and there. But making some adjustments and beginning to practice the more precise parts of the run, my times continued to fall. I passed the 11-minute mark, 10.5, and even the 10-minute mark without too much trouble. My progress seemed very quick, and I was quite pleased with how it was going until I set my next goal at 9:30. I could only get away with making grave mistakes for so long, and running imprecise lines only half-assedly trying to optimize things. I had a stream where, for once, I didn't reach my goal and end on a high note. I achieved my goal of lowering my time below 10 minutes within the first few hours, which initially was the final time I was hoping to achieve as a whole in order to feel ready to make the video, but by now I was hooked, and in trying to further push it and get it below 9:30, I kept running up against what seemed like a wall. I just couldn't manage to drop below it no matter how good a run felt. I was still losing a second in enough places that I just couldn't manage it. I did run after run after run, resetting every time I made a large mistake. The times of being happy with the gold split were long over. I wanted a better time overall, not just in one split or section. I wanted a new personal best. I understood very clearly from that point on how addicting speedrunning can be, as I experienced the plague of, oh, this'll be the last run, for a number of hours, until finally giving up and calling it an evening. Consoling myself by admitting the overall drop in PB time was still very commendable, and heading off to get some much needed rest. Luckily, after some rest and some warming up, I cleared that 9.5 minute barrier. Having spent some time off stream looking at the world record run, practicing for maybe an hour, and figuring out where I was consistently losing the most time. Over the entire 2-hour stream, I managed to take my 9:31 and turn it into a 9:13. Blasting past the barrier I had been slamming my head against, and getting tantalizingly close to what could be a 9-minute time. By the end of that stream, my sum of best, or in other words, if you took the lowest times I'd achieved in each section and added them up, that time was below 9 minutes. So that meant I knew I could do it if I really dialed in and got an incredibly clean run, start to finish. The next stream was probably going to be the last, as I'd try to lower my time by that final 13 seconds and cement myself in the sub-9 range. And so, as I set out on my journey to finally achieve my time, I threw on some fun music, jammed out with some of the regulars that had been coming to watch, focused up, and after 2 hours, I finally got this run. That session, I'd been getting gold splits like crazy, consistently lowering my average time, and building up consistency when it came to doing sections quickly. By the end, the sum of all my best times was down to 8 minutes 48 seconds, a full 10 seconds away from the 58 it was at before. Now, I could continue to run this, and probably push my time further and further if I really dedicated myself to it, but for now, I'm happy with what I achieved, and I'm ready to move on to doing other things, like making this video. I would love to speedrun more games in the future though, because the experience of learning this one was incredible, and I never would have imagined it would be as fun as it was. It was intimidating at first. The idea that I'd have to memorize all these tricks and learn all the details of the route and make sure everything was perfect, it was all relatively daunting. But once I was actually doing it, it didn't really seem so difficult after all. Now, I'm not sure that all runs are quite as approachable as this one. But in general, I would imagine it's not actually as difficult as you might think to get into speedrunning a game you like. Even if, like me, you're not competing against the world record, especially right when you start, it's absolutely enough to just enjoy the improvements you're making when compared to your own best times. It's incredibly satisfying, and by that metric, it doesn't really matter how hard the run might be, so long as you can get the enjoyment of seeing the progress that you're making while setting and achieving your own personal goals. I know speedrunning itself doesn't really quite fit into the Lunan first time experience ranking chart alongside specific games, but I'm still gonna rate it anyway. Getting my time to a sub 9-minute run, putting me in 13th out of 35 people on the leaderboards for this category, took me around 16 hours, which I think is honestly not that bad. I don't really have a metric to compare that against, but I'm going to say it with confidence anyway. I would encourage you to pick up the game because I think it's amazing in general, and a good play just on its own. Play through it for fun and get all the achievements, enjoy it to the fullest, let it cheer you up on a day when you're down, and then try out the speedrun for yourself. It's super approachable and very rewarding. My first time speedrunning experience, I would probably give a 9 or a 10, just because of how much I enjoyed almost every aspect of it. I could absolutely see how I would have experienced some doom and gloom if I'd done nothing but reset for hours hoping and praying for the perfect run. But I think generally, as long as you're just starting out and not taking it too seriously, there's primarily just a ton of fun to be had, enjoying a game you like in a new way. I really enjoyed my time speedrunning a short hike, and if you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like or subscribe to the channel if you want to see more stuff like this. I do intend to do more speedrunning in the future because I thought this was a blast, which will likely be streamed right here on this channel, and if you miss it, there's always the Vods Channel for you to go check out. If you want to chat with me, get updates, or post notifications, make sure you join the Discord, and if you like my voice, go and follow my Sleepytime Channel, where I make relatively long-form quiet videos for my friends to fall asleep to. Alright, that's all from me, so take care of yourselves, and with any luck, I will see you in the next video.